Okay, so welcome to this webinar, which is about a little orientation to the Awake in the Wild Nature Meditation Teacher Training. My name is Mark Coleman. You probably know me from my meditation work or my writing. I'm an author. I'm a Spirit Rock meditation teacher. I've been teaching insight meditation for 25 plus years, teaching nature-based meditation, Awake in the Wild retreats for about 20 years, and run both mindfulness teacher trainings and Awake in the Wild nature meditation teacher trainings. So this webinar is really oriented to the upcoming training, which will start in October of 2024. Sounds like a long way away, but as you know, with time, it's comes around sooner than we think. So this will be the seventh year-long teacher training that I've run with Awake in the Wild. I've done 5 in the US already. I'm in the middle of a European teacher training now. And then so the next, this one next year will be the 7th. I have to say they're my favorite things to do in the year. I love teaching in nature. I love teaching meditation, but I particularly like sharing this with teachers in training. I love many things about the teacher training. One of the things I love about it is we get to be in a community together for a year. There's usually about 20 people. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but it's sort of the rough number I'm aiming for. And we have, the year is the sort of the backbone, as it were, structure of the training is that it happens over 4 week-long residential retreats. And because they're week-long, because they're residential in person, then we get to form a really rich, deep, collaborative learning community. And I'll say a bit more about that as we go on. So we really get to know each other well. There's some beautiful, deep friendships have emerged from these trainings. I'm in contact with many, many graduates who I know have become really close friends, have even moved to be closer to each other, who teach together, practice together. So there's a wonderful sense of collegiality, of sangha, of community. And people, I would say, come. Hi, Alima. I notice you've just joined us. Welcome. I'm just in the middle of giving an orientation to the teacher training. So, and welcome, Emily. I see you just joined. I'm just in the middle of giving an orientation to the teacher training. So I'm going to talk for about maybe 10, 15 minutes and then open up for questions. So I was just saying that I absolutely love teaching these teacher trainings. This is my favorite thing to do. We get to practice in 4 retreats in beautiful locations. So the first retreat will be in Northern California in Marin County, the county I live, and we'll be on a beautiful regenerative ranch out by Point Reyes. This spectacular property. It's called Elephant Mountain or Black Mountain, and amazing views of Tomales Bay and Mount Tam and lots of Marin. It's very spacious. So the first retreat happens there. And then the second retreat, because it's winter in January, the first retreat's in mid-October, second retreat's in mid-January. And we do that retreat down in Baja, and it's wonderful, very quiet, remote wilderness center. It's actually not that remote. It feels very remote. It's north of Cabo. It's in the mountains. So it's a mountain desert landscape, but it's very lush. The backdrop is 7,000-foot peaks. And so there's a lot of water comes down. So there's lots of granite pools and beautiful tamarind trees and ficus trees. And it's just a really wonderful landscape. I love meditating there. It's very wild as the desert can be. And then the third retreat most likely will be in again in Northern California, in the foothills of the Sierras, in a wonderful private landholding, in a forest, beautiful forest that my friend owned. Welcome, Barbara. Just explaining the overview of the training. So the third retreat happens in April, in the foothills. And then the fourth retreat, again, will be, not again, will be in northern New Mexico, on the banks of a beautiful river in an old-growth ponderosa forest, about 2.5 hours north of Santa Fe. So what I try to do with the retreats, which is sort of the foundation of the training, is I try and choose different landscapes that evoke different qualities, because every landscape in nature has evokes different things. So we're in sort of pasture, farmland, slightly oak chaparral for the first retreat. The second retreat's in sort of mountain desert landscape. The third retreat's in the forest. And the fourth retreat's by water. So I try and bring in the elements, different elements to evoke different qualities. So and on those retreats, the first retreat really is a way for all of us to come together and really deeply experience the work. So a lot of that retreat is deep, quiet, silent meditation where I'm introducing, probably about 20, or what I consider key cornerstone foundational nature meditation practices from Awake in the Wild. Many, not all, but many of them you can find in either the Awake in the Wild book or my last book, The Field Guide to Nature Meditation. And so we immerse in the practices, we deeply drop into meditation and really feeling from the inside what it is to be richly contemplative in nature. And then the last couple of days, we do some debriefing of the retreat and the meditations and the flow and what came up. And at the same time, all the way through the retreat, it's different than a regular retreat, which some of you might have attended, a regular nature retreat. I am throughout this retreat, and all retreats, is I'm often, I'm meta processing, and I'm doing a sort of behind the curtain reveal. I'm talking about why I'm doing what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, where I'm doing it, for whom I'm doing it. So even though you're dropped into a silent retreat, you're also hearing about my process and about why I might choose to sit in this location, why I might choose to guide this meditation because we're up the mountain versus in the valley, and why I might choose to sequence these body of meditations on one day versus the next day, etc. And then the second, third, and fourth retreat follow somewhat of a similar format where how this is a very hands-on, very experiential course. And so I believe that the best way to learn how to teach meditation is to teach meditation. So from the second retreat onwards, there's a lot of practice teaching. I've learned this so I've also taught, as I mentioned at the beginning, mindfulness teacher trainings for about 12 years now. Just about to go off to France next week to teach that one. And we actually have people start teaching from the second day on that teacher training. So I give you a little breather. You get the first week and a few months. But the second retreat, the way that flows, is we have some arriving half day of practice, and then I start introducing different practices. I should say that I'm also co-teaching this teacher training with Laurie Schwanbeck, who is unfortunately couldn't be here, but is a wonderful teacher, mindfulness practitioner, mindfulness facilitator, curriculum designer. She's worked a lot in the corporate space. She's also a lifelong psychotherapist, trained in Hakomi and other somatic sensory practices. So I'm being the founder of this work. I'm sort of the primary teacher, you could say, but Laurie will be bringing a lot of different uh, teachings, pedagogy, whatnot. Um, so, um, so the second retreat will be sharing a practice, giving some theory around the practice, guiding the practice, and then you'll be invited to get into triads, and you'll begin practice teaching each other. And then we do a debrief, and then we follow a similar format in the afternoon. Um, so so throughout the second, third, and fourth retreat, there's a lot of practice opportunity to feel into what and how you might share a practice. So the foundation of the training is really based on the as a teacher, we teach from our own experience. We teach from our own practice. You're not teaching from a script, you're not teaching from a manual, you're teaching from your lived experience of the practice. And so we get to sort of swim in that territory for much of the course. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, for those of you who came late, the one of the strengths of this training is it's a beautiful collegial supportive learning community forms. And I'd say there's a few reasons why that happens. One is, we're all meditators, we have a shared intention, we love nature. But when you practice teaching each other, there's a certain level of vulnerability and a certain level of openness and realness. And so that begins to form a very much richer connection with other people. And also, we do a lot of inquiry. So we do a lot of facilitated dyad and triad explorations of different themes around nature, around practice, around mindfulness, meditation. And so that also helps deepen the connection and trust and community. So as I said, there's a rich collegial field. I often say you will learn as much from each other as you will from myself or from Laurie, because you get to listen to 20 different people guiding. And so as much as I might be guiding and orienting you to this particular practice, you will inevitably share it with your voice and your language. And so you could think about the teacher training as a journey into you feeling comfortable in the teacher seat and you feeling comfortable, deeply immersed and embodied in these nature meditation practices. So the second retreat, we're exploring what I call foundational mindfulness practices, but done outside. So we will explore breathing with nature, mindful breathing. It's something that you're probably all quite familiar with. But when we do that practice outside, it has a different flavor because we're breathing fresh air emanating from photosynthesizing trees, plants, and we're aware of breeze and fragrance and moisture. And then we'll do mindfulness of body, and we'll explore the body sensations and the body as a sensory vehicle for connecting with the nature around us. And again, we do that inside, but outside, because our senses are more alive, it's a much more immediate, visceral, embodied practice. I mean, we'll do mindful walking, again, something you might have done on retreats, sometimes inside, sometimes outside. Walking outside in nature is a very different experience than walking inside. Again, more embodied, more sensory, more tuned, more inclusive. And so we'll do a bunch of those foundational mindfulness practices. Um, and then, as well as me guiding and Laurie guiding and you practice teaching, then there's that. And I also introduce other themes. I might be exploring conceptual themes around what mindfulness is, or talking about some practical considerations of what it means to be teaching in nature, teaching with different conditions, different landscapes, different weather, and all the different things we need to do to adjust to the variable conditions when we're outside. Then the third retreat, we explore more the sensory awareness practices, so the listening, the seeing, touching, and then a whole variety of meandering practices, and meandering with joy and delight and um, sensory awareness. Also more heartful practices, so how the heart is moved to feel love or loving or gratitude. And again, I or Laurie will guide a practice, then you will practice teaching each other and being taught by each other. So at the end of each retreat, you've both taught a lot, you've been taught by many people. And so there's a way of kind of steeping in these practices. And in the third retreat, I'll also talk about some logistics around running a nature program, around some teacher-student dynamics that may come up, other practical logistics. And between retreat 3 and retreat 4, retreat 3 is preparing you to do a practicum where you to teach either 2 half-day programs or 1 full-day program as part of learning how to teach these awaken the wild practices to the public. And then the fourth retreat, I'll emphasize more the wisdom practices. We'll do things like elements practice, looking at impermanence, looking at interconnectedness. And then also, again, exploring other themes that are sort of in support of teaching, which include things like ethics, including speaking about equity and inclusion and creating more diverse spaces. I'll also be talking about there's a bunch of other themes that are part of the latter retreat. The ecological crisis and how we speak to that, hold that, work with the eco-anxiety and grief that might be showing up in your students. And also, again, looking at more teacher-student dynamics and how to work with different people, different populations in different settings. So that's the 4 retreats, very rich, very immersive, rich learning environments. And then between the retreats, there's a monthly webinars with either myself or with Laurie or a guest teacher. We're exploring other themes, might be around the science of meditation and nature, it might be around different facets of meditation or concentration. And then some monthly webinars. Then you're also formed into pods, generally geographic, of about 4 to 5 people. And the point of those pods are to meet once a month or twice a month. And again, as I've mentioned before, there's a very strong collegial bond happens. And so, including in the pods, and the pods often choose to meet more than what I ask. And the idea with the pods is both it's a time to check in about your practice, time to check in about the course and the materials and assignments and the readings, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then also to practice teaching. So each pod meeting, at least 2 of you will get to practice guiding a meditation. So if you're doing meeting twice a month, then you all get to practice teach once a month minimum. I also invite you to find a practice buddy. So you team up with one other person, again, someone to check in with more informally, to practice teaching if you want more of that, or to process things that are coming up. In the other aspects of the course, there is reading assignments. So I assign a couple of book readings in between each retreat that are related to nature, some to research, some to deep ecology and working with climate crisis, etc. And the pre-reading is really reading the Awaken the Wild book, and then in as much as you can studying in the practices from that book or from my last book, The Field Guide to Nature Meditation. And then there's the assignments. And as I said, this training is a very experiential, immersive orientation. And so less academic focus. I mean, there is readings, there are assignments. The first assignment is after the first retreat, where you're invited to explore in an essay your understanding of meditation in nature and your own experience and journey with that. It's not a graded essay. It's just really for you to begin to articulate, how do you talk about mindfulness in nature? How would you, how would you talk about that um, with, students? Um, so, and the second assignment is a video where you are invited to um, offer this is my cat, that is Chester's tail. One of my cats. The second assignment is a 15-minute guided nature meditation, which you'll be drawing on some of the meditations you've done, submitting that. And the third assignment is after retreat 3, where you will be doing your practicum. And at the end of that, prior to the completion of the course, you'll be asked to do a developmental essay and a review of your practicum. And then the last component is you are assigned a mentor, and a mentor is someone who has been on the last, has been through the training, often from the previous cohort, but sometimes further back. And the purpose of the mentor relationship is for you to have someone, again, to check in with, and they're particularly helping me and Laurie have another set of eyes on you and your work and your development, but particularly around they're going to be reviewing your assignments. So the essay you submit, the meditation video, the practicum videos that will have both the meditation and a mini talk, like 5 to 7 minute talk. And then you'll meet with them at least once between each retreat, as a way to check in with about your material. It also check in how you're doing, how's your practice and whatnot. So that's kind of the lay of the land. Yeah, it's a very delightful process, and we'll be in beautiful places. And some of you will be coming more to just deepen in your own practice of Awaken the Wild. And some of you will be coming to do that, but also wish to teach. And I should say something about what happens when you graduate. If you complete the course and the assignments, then you become a certified graduate of Awaken the Wild. And there are many things you can do. So at awakenthewild.com, as many of you have already probably tuned in, Awaken the Wild teachers teach on the daily nature meditation in the morning. They teach in the weekly evening meditation. They might teach a solstice or an equinox program. They might teach a half day or a day long online. I've just developed a 6-week course, not just, but in the last year, mindfulness-based nature connection course, which is a kind of a synthesis of all these key nature meditation practices. So you can learn how to teach that. I'm getting some research done with that particular course, so you can teach it as an evidence-based course. And then people go on to do many different things with this training. As I say, some just do it for their own practice, but many go on to teach it to their colleagues, there's a graduate who teaches to nonprofit leaders. There's a local graduate here, Nikki, has a surf school, and she does all kinds of great work with mindfulness and nature and surfing, and working with young women. People who teach it in hospitals, in hospital gardens, people who are doing it at Harvard, in the botanical gardens at Harvard, integrating it with Qigong, integrating it with stress reduction, integrating it with resilience working with activists. So a whole range of opportunities. And then what this graduates you to do is to teach classes, to teach courses, day longs, half days, and maximum of a weekend. This isn't a nature meditation teacher training where you can go off and teach a week-long retreat. That's a different level of training, and requires some apprenticing and mentoring, and it's a multi-year process. And I'm going to be forming a mentoring group around that. And then you join the Awaken the Wild cohort, which well, once this current cohort graduates, there'll be about 110 graduates, about 20 or so in Europe, about half a dozen or so in Canada, the rest in the United States and Hawaii. There's a graduate in Hawaii. She teaches nature meditation through swimming, snorkeling. There's a graduate in the Central Valley. She teaches days of meditation with rowing. There's a graduate Kim up in Ontario. She's in Ontario's often in the snow in winter, so she'll teach days of nature meditation, integrating it with snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. And I lead lots of retreats locally, sitting half days, 1 days, and also hiking days. So one of the advantages of doing the Awaken the Wild teacher training, given the teacher training field, as you may know, there's a lot of mindfulness training programs out there, and there's a lot of people graduating from mindfulness training programs, but there's very little happening in the nature meditation training space. I would say I'm the only one doing meditation teacher training. There's forest bathing, which is its own modality. It's a non-meditation orientation to being in nature. So the field is wide open, and there's a lot of great research happening in nature right now, and also in contemplation in nature, and that the funding generally follows the research, and interest in activities generally follows the research. So I'm excited about nature immersion and nature meditation growing as a discipline. So, all right, well, that was a lot of words. Talked perhaps longer than I wanted to, but I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. So, yeah. So just last logistics. The cost is $6,900. There's an early bird special right now. So if you sign up before the end of November, before December 1st, the cost is $6,450. And so the application process is you go to awakenthewild.com, look at the teacher training page, and then send in your application. It's a relatively simple application. Yeah, there's some prerequisites of 3 years of practice, ideally set a retreat, mindfulness retreat, ideally a nature retreat. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful, and hopefully maybe see you on the training.